Welcome to episode 78, Ray Dalio, how he built Bridgewater Associates into the world's largest hedge fund. This is an outline of episode 78. There are three reasons why we study Ray Dalio. First, he built Bridgewater Associates, the largest hedge fund in the world, with 160 billion assets under management. Two, Bridgewater Associates had returned the most profit to investors. Third, Bridgewater Associates is also famous for its unusual corporate culture, radical truth, radical transparency. Ray Dalio was born in Jackson Heights in Queens, New York in 1949. His father was a jazz musician. He bought his first stock at the age of 12.
So yes, I bought stocks, or I bought a stock, Northeast Airlines. It was the first stock I bought. My whole criteria were, it was the only company I ever heard of that was selling for less than $5 a share, and I figured if less than $5 a share, I can buy more shares. I mean, dumb, right? But it turned out that company was about to be acquired, was about to go broke. Somebody acquired it, and it tripled or went up a lot, and I made money.
He was also a caddy for the rich and famous. That was how he started.
I caddied for Richard Nixon. I caddied for the Duke of Windsor. In fact, that caddied for very interesting people at that golf course. And at the time also, there was Wall Street crowd, and this was in the 60s. And at the time, the United States was on top of the world. Stocks kept going up. And everybody talked about the stock market. So it looks precocious, more precocious than it was. It was just what people were talking about. And I certainly was interested in having those conversations, and I was interested in that experience. So I could talk about people, with Wall Street people, when we were walking down the course, about what stocks were good and bad, and that interaction. And because I was speaking to them about the stock market, and they were really nice people, we had those quality conversations, and then I began the process.
He did poorly in high school.
I hated high school. I just wouldn't study. I would remember that, my mother would send me to my room and say, you have to study. And I wouldn't study. I'd do anything. I would be alone in the room. I'd find something to think about or do, and I wouldn't study. And I did terrible in high school.
He did very well at the university and got into Harvard Business School.
And I barely got into a college that, C.W. Post College, which it was a great college for me at the time. And it was only then that I could begin to pick my courses. So then I began to pick things that were interesting to me. And then it was exciting. I loved it, right? And you had the free time. Like college, other school, most of the time, you go at a certain time, the bell rings, you go to the next class, it's packed in. In college, there was freedom. I always loved freedom. I remember when I got my car or whatever it would be, anything that brought me freedom, I loved. And so college allowed me freedom, the freedom to choose the subjects largely that I was interested in, the freedom of time. And so I did very well in college. And then I went to Harvard Business School.
In 1973, he graduated Harvard MBA.
I worked, at two Wall Street firms for about 2 years. I got out of school in 73. And I had problems fitting into the organization, meaning, I literally got in a fist fight with my boss because on New Year's Eve we were drunk together, and it was that kind of. I was not a well-behaved. And I always loved being independent. And at the time, clients of Shearson, it was then Shearson at the time, had great relationships. They loved it. They loved working with me. And so they were going to pay me. And so I could then start my business. I didn't view it as starting a business. I just viewed it as I get to do what I like to do, which is to play the markets, and they'll pay me to do that.
In 1975, at the age of 26, he founded Bridgewater Associates in his two-bedroom apartment in Manhattan, New York. Where did the name Bridgewater Associates come from?
When I graduated from Harvard Business School, I was trading commodities. And this was in 1973. This was when there was the oil shock, and there was a need for commodities all around the world. And I had a bunch of pals who were in different parts of the world, and we decided to put together an association, we called it, that would bridge the waters. Which what it meant was that we'd find commodities that were located in one place, and sold soybean oil from the United States to Iran in that kind of association. And this was one of those things that we did kind of part-time, but it actually didn't end up being, I think we did probably 2 transactions. It was more of an idea than a reality.
Ray Dalio has been practicing Transcendental Meditation since 1968. He said this is the single most important influence of his life.
In 1968, the Beatles went to India to learn how to meditate. It was interesting, and then I tried, I learned how to meditate. It was definitely life-changing. Probably more than anything, it had a bigger effect on my life than the way it works is. It's basically open-mindedness. So what happens is, normally you can't control your brain.
Here's a summary of the principles and the culture of Bridgewater Associates.
Well, let me describe the Bridgewater culture in one sentence. It is to have an idea of meritocracy which pursues meaningful work and meaningful relationships through radical truth and radical transparency. So by meaningful work, like are you in a mission and together and what that's like. And the meaningful relationships is, can we be totally truthful with each other? Like, I don't think you're so good at that, or you might be wrong, or you made mistakes. And can we have that kind of conversation in a radically truthful way? And radical transparency, like we tape everything for everybody to see so that there's no spin. Okay, can you operate in an environment like that so that nothing's hidden? Because that way you'll have a real idea of meritocracy because you won't have an information imbalance. This is an unusual culture. Because we've sort of kept it behind the scenes, in a sense, it's largely misunderstood. Some people absolutely hate it, and some people could never work anywhere else.
In 2011, he had his best year as a trader and took home $3.9 billion. In 2013, he made the video, How the Economic Machine Works. It is an attempt to teach the public to avoid needless financial pain. His view on short-term debt cycle and long-term debt cycles are particularly revolutionary.
How the economic machine works in 30 minutes. The economy works like a simple machine, but many people don't understand it, or they don't agree on how it works, and this has led to a lot of needless economic suffering. I feel a deep sense of responsibility to share my simple but practical economic template. Though it's unconventional, it has helped me to anticipate and to sidestep the global financial crisis, and it has worked well for me for over 30 years. And they create 3 main forces that drive the economy. Number 1, productivity growth. Number 2, the short-term debt cycle. And number 3, the long-term debt cycle. One takes about 5 to 8 years, and the other takes about 75 to 100 years. Creates cycles, and if the cycle goes up, it eventually needs to come down. This leads us into the short-term debt cycle.
What have I learned today? First, Ray Dalio is the founder of the biggest and most successful hedge fund in the world. Second, he's a very complex man with different philosophy, radical truth, radical transparency. Third, he views the world as a machine with cause and effect. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and leave your comments and questions below. My coming video will be 10 lessons of Ray Dalio. Wishing everyone peace and prosperity.